Hello and welcome to Newsclick and Communalism Combat. Today we are going to talk about the new draft of a law called Manav Suraksha Kanun, and to talk with us on the issue we have Shehla Rashid, student and activist. She's also someone who has launched a national campaign against lynching. Welcome to our show.
Thank you.
So, what is the need for this new law?
Glad you asked this question at the outset. 1 month back, that is on 5th of June, many of us got together, many youth got together, and we decided that we have to have a law against mob lynching. And this need arose because lynching as a specific crime is not defined in Indian law. Now, if we sort of go back to history and we look at people who are lynched or which identity is lynched. So we can go back to the US, where lynching has been defined as a specific crime against the blacks because there is a whole racial history to it. This would happen and people would be lynched and burnt and hung on trees, or stuff like that would happen. In India, if you look at it, people belonging to vulnerable identities. Now this may be a transgender, hijra, this may be a mentally challenged woman. Mentally challenged women are often they are branded as witches, or even not just mentally challenged women. Widows are often branded as witches. They are lynched so that their property can be confiscated. So all of this happens within a context of inequality and vulnerability. And that's why this certain spike that you see in lynchings of Muslim people, there is a context to it. The context is that Narendra Modi government has come to power. And in 2014, when the Narendra Modi government came to power, days after that, you must have heard about the Mohsin Sheikh lynching case in Pune. I mean, he was targeted for nothing. I mean, he was having a beard, he had a Muslim identity, and he was just lynched on the street. And today, what is the status of the case? All the murderers are out on bail. And no lawyer wants to take up that case. Even the public prosecutor has said in writing that he wants to be relieved from the case. So there is definitely government pressure on him. And why is there government pressure on a public prosecutor? Because these lynch mobs, they are supported by the government. They are supported by the central government. And I don't mean this just as a rhetoric or a hyperbole. You have Union Minister Mahesh Sharma going to Dadri and paying homage to the lynching accused, Ravi Sisodia, who died in custody. Then you have a BJP MLA, Gyandev Ahuja. He says that he doesn't regret the killing of Pehlu Khan and all of that. So you see, there is obviously it's not like Narendra Modi will tweet and say that I support lynchings. He will not do that. But he will send enough signals to the whole system that we are on the side of the people who lynch. Now, the next obvious question comes, oh, can't Hindus be lynched? Yeah, of course they can be. If the law and order goes out of the window, then anyone can be lynched. So for the longest time, the lynchings of Dalits or the attacks on Dalits have been tolerated in this country, and that's why today we see that anyone can be lynched. It has been brought to that point. Now, if law and order, this becomes a norm, tomorrow you can say, oh, you are wearing a short dress and I can lynch you. And lynching represents that you are taking the law into your own hands, or in the case of, let's just say the killings that have happened since Dadri, there is another specific context, the beef laws. Now, who is supposed to enforce the beef law? Let's just say beef is banned, let's just say chicken is banned, let's just say India becomes a vegetarian country. Even then, who is in charge of enforcing those laws? Is it Bajrang Dal? Is it VHP? Is it RSS members? Or is it the police? Now, that's our point really. Our point is that whatever the state has to do with beef and cow and all of that, that's another question. We first need to talk about human beings being killed at will by vigilante mobs. That can't be tolerated. Now, the law that we are asking for, it recognizes all of this. It recognizes vulnerability of migrant workers, of mentally challenged people, of people who are transgender, of people who belong to the marginalized communities, of women being the biggest marginalized community out there. And we are saying that this has to be recognized as a crime because two things. First, if the lynching let's just say if the lynching results in death, then who is actually responsible for the murder? In Mohsin Sheikh's case, the fact that people are out on bail just means that no one killed him. Who killed him then? There is no responsibility. The second case where murder does not take place, let's just say someone is just assaulted or maimed, In that case, what happens? I mean, you can get away with not even an FIR, with a non-cognizable report, which doesn't even go to court, which in most cases is, it's just a formality. It never goes to court. So and this is happening at a large scale, in the sense that the government has given a go-ahead once. And now, even after Narendra Modi's, even the PM's, even after his statements, these lynch mobs don't seem to come under control, right? Because he has unleashed a monster and he can't put it back in the bottle now. And so that is why it's really important for us to have a law at this moment, because every single incident can be dismissed as being isolated, and every single case of lynching can be dismissed as being one of assault.
So what is the constitutionality of this draft?
This draft it's the law that we have proposed. It's consistent with the Constitution, because the Constitution mandates the government, it actually makes it compulsory for the government to protect the right to life, not just of every citizen, but every human living in India. And we've often seen attacks on Africans, we've often seen attacks on people from the Northeast. And if the state doesn't do anything, it amounts to complicity on part of the state. And that is why the right to life it's supreme. It has to be guarded. I mean, even if someone has eaten beef, even if someone has done something, it needs to be guarded. And it's to give you a couple of examples, as in why this law is not redundant, because that's often the question that comes up. Let's just say acid attacks. Acid attack was anyway punishable as assault, right? But why did we ask for a specific law against acid attacks? Because it happens according to a specific pattern. So there's a person who will be, there'll be a case of unrequited love, there'll be a jilted lover, and he will sort of have this ideology that, if you can't be mine, you can be no one else's, right? And that's why I'll sort of ruin you forever, so that you can't sort of go out with anyone else, so that you can't see anyone else or marry anyone else. And that, even as it was just assault, but it had to be recognized as a specific crime because it happens so often, and because there is a social ideology that backs it. Similarly, in Pakistan, what has happened recently is they have brought a specific legislation against honor killings. So special laws are made. So for example, the SC/ST Atrocities Act, for the longest time, it has been, how effective it's not a separate question, but specific legislations to deal with specific crimes are. So to give you another example, unrelated, but just to put an analogy, let's just say someone rapes a minor, then they can already be charged under rape. But why do we need why do we need it to be defined that rape against a minor carries additional penalties, or it's a compounded crime? So that's what it is. And murder and assault may be crimes like that, but lynching has to be recognized as a specific crime, because it happens because of certain social ideologies, because of a certain view that this is wrong, or tomorrow, now it's not even beef, now it's not even pubs, now it's just that your Muslim identity. Junaid's case, Muslim identity, you can be lynched, it wasn't even a case of beef. That makes it even more horrible.
There are provisions in the draft to punish the government officials who don't prevent the lynching.
The accountability of public officials is very important. The accountability of police is very important. And to give you a different example, but sort of in relation to making a point, when farmers in Mandsaur were protesting, the government did not blink an eyelid before firing on them. When students are protesting, the government doesn't blink an eyelid before, tear gas. And we saw what happened in Punjab University. They were attacked with tear gas and lathis and everything. So if the police wants, they can really control. No public lynching or riot mobs or lynch mobs can run amok without the knowledge of the government, without the knowledge of the local police. The local police always knows whenever there is a build-up. And lynchings and riots do not happen without a build-up. There is often a build-up. Often there will be a Mahapanchayat, there will be a rumor. There is a structure of a riot, there is a structure of a lynching. All of these things happen. There will be a WhatsApp forward. Then people will be called to some place. Some Sangeet Som type person will come, he will give some speech. So there's a build-up. And that has to be prevented by the police. Now we are saying that had the police not been complicit, or had the police not been sort of, had the mobs not have the confidence कि police हमारे साथ है. I mean, this was said in many of the lynching cases that police हमारे साथ है, police is with us. This happens due to various caste or community factors. They think that the police is with them. That means that the police at some level or the other is complicit. And we have seen how this happened in Gujarat. I mean, the model has been perfected over and over again, not just in Gujarat. I mean, in the case of 1984, same thing happened. The police, I mean, so many journalists have written that only if the police had acted in 1984, the killings could have been stopped. And that is why we are saying that the inquiry should be done by an independent judicial commission and not by the local police, because if they couldn't prevent it, or if they couldn't do anything to stop it, how can we trust them to do a fair inquiry? That's our sort of logic behind it.
So there are other provisions in the draft which have like provisions to punish people who are the mind behind the lynching, and not just the people who are on the ground lynching the victims, and also people who financially aid the lynchings. So what was the purpose to include all this?
Often what happens is that there are some masterminds who sit behind the comfort of their smartphone. They can incite rumors against a certain person. They can have all sorts of fake news and everything circulated over WhatsApp, over local WhatsApp groups, over Mohalla WhatsApp group, RWA WhatsApp group, something, and incite rumors against a specific person or a specific community. This needs to be investigated. Now, this is not a straightforward thing. I mean, this in every case will have to be investigated, and it will only come up through investigation. But those persons, I mean, of course, the punishment should be proportionate. We think that the courts have the wisdom to sort of differentiate between who actually committed the murder and who was responsible in a different way. But we think that because right now there is no hate speech provision in the country, and hate speech is often mistaken for blasphemy. And we are not talking about blasphemy. We are not talking about people who are disrespecting religion or disrespecting gods or something. That's not what we are talking about. There are specific calls to violence that are made. Now, in the case of, say, Gurmeher Kaur, I mean, there's this BJP leader, and I have put it out in a tweet, who is on hoardings with Narendra Modi and every big BJP leader. And he says that Gurmeher Kaur should be raped like the victim in the 16 December case. That's what he says. And that 20-year-old girl, she now has to roam around with security. There is no hate speech law in the country, right? That's the problem. So, I mean, that would require additional legislation. But right now, for the purposes of lynching, as I said, it has a structure, and that structure needs to be recognized. And no law right now does that. So, I mean, that's why, I mean, it's not spontaneous. Our whole point is that it's not spontaneous. You and I, we don't just get together to kill someone. Unless someone has indoctrinated us to the point and made us believe that, someone has to be killed, or they deserve to be eliminated, or they deserve to be raped.
So, were there any existing laws that you took inspiration from while drafting this?
Yes, there is a, so first of all, I mean, the law was drafted by the drafting committee, but yes, when we made the drafting committee, when we nominated the members of the drafting committee, we took inspiration from the US anti-lynching law, and that recognizes them, and that specifically recognizes lynchings of blacks. And I mean, that is what the SC/ST Atrocities Act was also about. That specifically mentions atrocities against Dalits and tribals. But we are actually talking about a broader thing, because today anyone is vulnerable. No, and it's not just today. I mean, people have been vulnerable for the longest time. We don't want to make it restricted to Muslims, Dalits and tribals.
Thank you so much for talking with us. This is all the time we have for today. Keep watching us.